An initiative of the Greater Des Moines Partnership formed in 2007, the Business Innovation Zone, the BIZ, exists to connect entrepreneurial needs with qualified resources and to provide guided professional and business direction. The BIZ helps entrepreneurs maximize their successes by helping them navigate resources, strengthen knowledge, improve skills, form strategic alliances, and secure proper capitalization. To find out more about the BIZ, visit www.bizci.org.
In absence of a wine glass and a fork, I found glass and a spoon. I'm trying to get your attention. It's kind of hard to get a group of friends that are talking to suddenly switch to panel mode, but I'm going to try. No, I'm not Mike Caldwell. I don't look like him. I talk like him. I certainly am not in here. He sends his regrets. He's in Boston today, and I'm filling in for him with this panel. Just a word of warning. I was one of these panelists before, and I got recruited to do this. So here's our bench for future panels. Anyway, the BIZ, as many of you probably already know, is a community-supported entity within the partnership whose primary purpose is to connect entrepreneurs with skills, with resources, with education, mentorship, guidance, and things of that nature as they are building their businesses, growing their businesses, and going through various phases. It's been around since 2007. Anybody new to the BIZ or these luncheons? One, two. More than three. All right. If any of you want to know more about the BIZ, I'm happy to answer questions after the panel as well, or directly connect me with Mike, who can fill in even further. So I'll just look back on my notes for a second. We have the next hour or so for this panel, but before we go into the panel, just a brief intro about how the panel process has evolved over the last year or so. The BIZ events like this luncheon traditionally have been a speaker delivering from their place of expertise every month. About a year ago, this concept of a panel was created to bring multiple experts who may choose to deliver a statement or two or longer about where they're coming from on the topic for this panel, our topic for the day. But the real benefit is if you begin with questions directly, and then the panel can take the discussion with you in any direction that this audience wants to take. So I would strongly suggest thinking about and talking about this topic for the day and just leveraging this panel as best as you can. There are a couple of events I'd love to tell you about. The BIZ and the partnership have an entity called Plains Angels, which is an angel seed investment group that meets on a monthly basis. The group itself is for accredited investors, but it also provides education on how investment works, both for the entrepreneurs and for the investors themselves. So the next session is on Thursday, next week Thursday from 8:30 to 10. It is focused on valuation of early stage companies. Valuation, as some of you may know, especially for early stage companies, is more of an art than a science, but there are several factors that can go into creating a true value that you can place on a company. The session itself is led by professionals in the field. So whether you're an entrepreneur or an investor looking to learn a little more about valuation, that may be a great session. And then the other one is November 20th. The BIZ luncheon here will be a frank conversation with Sheldon Oringer of Polaris. A seasoned entrepreneur himself. He's taken, at least three companies on this resume. So he's presided over a public company that grew from 150 to 3,000 people. Another company that he took public, it started with that 60 and took it to about 1,000 employees in public. He's a member of the Plains Angels, prolific angel investor in the community, great guy to know. She'll be here November 20th at this very time. So, today, quite a crew. I've got somebody representing a previous competitor of mine, a previous customer of mine, a current partner, and two I've never done business with. so there's room to grow, right?
You can decide which one of those is the best.
Well, I do know that with the Animal Rescue League, I have more allergies than I can count, so I don't know if I'll ever become a customer. But hey, you never know, right? So I'm just going to introduce from the far corner a guy I've sparred with based on PR, Josh Fleming at the Leaks Group, and then Susan Ramsey from the Partnership, and Stephanie Fowler from Animal Rescue League, Katie Miller-Smith, right? Yes, Cash Fire Media, and John Van Gates Industry. This panel is pretty big. Very interesting set of backgrounds. So, if you guys would like a sentence or two about yourselves, and then you can open up the floor for questions.
Well, thank you all for coming today. I approach the topic of PR and marketing from a variety of different perspectives. Spent 15 years in higher education administration. Got my MBA at Northwestern, which kind of spawned a leap in the nonprofit world. I ran a manufacturing company for 6 years. And today, I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Spinistry. I have a small consulting firm, and I sit on several boards. One of those, which is a software startup company. So I come at it from a lot of different angles, and will defer all questions to my fellow panelists.
Hi, everyone. I'm Katie. As mentioned, I'm the director of Cash Fire Media, so we're small digital solutions for that means we do a lot of work in web, mobile, and social. My background, I've been in different marketing positions over the last 8 years with small family companies. Previously, I was in marketing and investment banking. Now I essentially run the team at Cash Fire. So I have a lot to share about the work that we've done in the past few years.
Hi, Stephanie with Animal Rescue League. Our big focus, obviously being a nonprofit, is to have the most effective marketing and PR possible with spending money doing money. So a lot that we do is surrounded around social media, helping for-profit companies create cause marketing campaigns where we collaborate our efforts and have it be mutually beneficial. And then also on the side, I have a lot of friends and family who have small businesses that I just do consulting for. And my background is mostly been nonprofit fundraising and marketing for the past almost 9 years in Eastern Iowa and now in Central Iowa.
I'm Susan with the Greater Des Moines Partnership, and I've spent 15 years in broadcast media before putting on a PR hat. So I really come at public relations from a reporter's experience and eye. When I was invited to participate and I found out who my fellow panelists would be, it was very apparent to me that I was going to be the voice of traditional PR. But I did want to share with you that public relations is PR public relations, not media relations. There is so little definition about what is media today. When Mark and I spoke prior to this, putting together the panel and putting together the topic for today, we talked about the fact that everyone is a reporter today, and that's the challenge in branding and messaging, is you're not necessarily talking to someone who went to journalism school, who operates under any code of ethics, or right. So that opens up a whole bit of opportunity, but it also opens up windows of challenges. So it's a very interesting world in public relations today, and I'm very excited to hear what my esteemed colleagues have to say.
So back to follow. Thank you. My name is Josh Fleming with the Meeks Group. At the Meeks Group, I handle brand strategy, a lot of sales and marketing for the company, and a lot of digital work. I've spent time both on the ad agency as well as the client side. Worked for a couple ad agencies in Des Moines, doing a lot of digital and social work. And then on the client side, I worked at Dice.com for about 7 years, big tech job board, somewhere like a Monster or a Hot Job. So I see it from both angles, from both point of views. I'm also a failed entrepreneur. I have a startup called BuyMe.com, which Google stole, Facebook borrowed, and Twitter won. much fine. So good times as an entrepreneur. So I've seen what doesn't work and what works and what a good idea is not. I'm also an adjunct professor at Drake University. I teach an internet marketing class, and I'm the president of the American Marketing Association of Iowa. And I have 4 kids, and I'm really just way too busy. But they promised me a free lunch, so I thought this would be fun.
I think with those intros, thank you. Love to open up the floor for any questions directed at any of the panelists. I'd hate to reach into my seating questions since they won't be able to. Thank you.
I'll get started. So I'm Abby with the Ambassador and our target market that we're really going after right now are restaurant owners and small places. And this is a market that is hyper involved. I mean, they're like you, Josh, and just going all the time, but aren't always plugged into social media outlets. But as a startup, we don't necessarily have the budgets for the typically more costly traditional forms of marketing like direct mail. So I'm wondering if anyone has some guidance or what can we think about for reaching a population that is got a lot going on and they aren't necessarily looking at social media.
Can I ask a question before we answer that?
Yes.
So these are independent restaurant owners?
Yes.
So are these people who they love to cook and they decided that owning a restaurant was a good idea?
A lot of them.
Right. So they're discovering at some point that was a bad idea. So you can just give me a couple of more sentences about the persona. You kind of know who these people are, right? So they're overworked and they're independents, right? You're not looking for the general manager role in there that you're looking for. Okay. So age, sex, behaviors.
I'd say we're looking at men and women, and both people who are opening restaurants, coffee shops, and bars for the first time, and people who are looking to upgrade. Maybe they've been open for 4 years or so, and they have like some funky cash register, and they want a sleek-looking iPad on their counter.
And maybe they finally have some money to actually invest in that kind of thing, whereas in the beginning.
Right.
That's all.
So,
yes.
This is a stumper because it would make me feel better.
I don't know.
I have a quick thought for you. I attended a conference of chamber executives last month, and one of the emerging technologies that chambers are using to talk about their members and promote their members is TripAdvisor.com, which took me by surprise. That's what I took away from the conference. It's because it's like Yelp in that you can provide ratings and that sort of thing. It's a way to help get your name out there within the community. You might explore that and see if that's a valid opportunity. TripAdvisor.com.
I'd also add, this is more of a relational thing. Actually, my stepdad is head of the Iowa Restaurant Association. So I would say to get in where the people are and see if we can do a sponsorship, a presentation, something that would appeal to them beyond the traditional salesy thing. But add some value, and maybe it's through the form of an educational opportunity where you can show them, particularly people who have been in it for a long time or people who are new to it, hey, this is what's new and upcoming in technology and restaurants, and this is what our company offers, and we'd love to help and come from that angle as opposed to here's a product I'd like you to buy it. And I think they would see you as a resource instead of as a salesperson. You may not get the sale right then, but over time you would get to that where they would see you as somebody who is a go-to for them. And I'd be happy to bring this to them. Let's do it right now.
Yeah, I really have, and it's easy to say start local and using grab, and you guys are doing that. But, along with that, associations, and you mentioned chambers as well, easy and grabbing businesses when they're starting, right? You kind of build it and make a presence. So that's where, in my mind, it's not necessarily non-traditional PR, it's just one and make some of these kinds of businesses.
I think Stephanie nailed it with the sponsorship opportunity, because she's really, I think, getting after there is the influencer. And influencer is this term that's tossed around a lot in social media circles. Well, you got to reach the influencers, but you can break that down and really influencers in traditional marketing or traditional PR. So the Iowa Restaurant Association would be an influencer of all of your customers if they're members, as would the chamber, and those sorts of things. So figuring that out, and then figuring out, once you engage them, what do you want them to do? What's the call to action? Do we want them to fill out a form? Do we want them to pick up a phone? Can they order online? Those sorts of things. Just make it as simple as possible, I think. But definitely, I think the sponsorship route is great, and then find some way to reach people that influence their decisions.
To make you feel better, you probably have chosen one of the hardest audiences next to physicians. But I can see that. One of my clients is a bike shop, right? And he started with because he loves bikes, and he's a brilliant bike guy. He's a horrible business guy, and so you're probably dealing with a lot of those same folks. I agree 100% with Josh that starting point is so key. That how do I get started? I watch this client on a daily basis. I go into the shop and kind of observe. And if people try to sell him stuff all the time, if they can't, he's going to make that decision in about 30 seconds because he's got 10 bikes he's got to work on. And if that starting point is just so critical, I'd like to know more about your services, your products to understand if you've got that figured out. But certainly that's got to be a real important thing for you to consider. It's got to be easy. Yeah, please. Yeah, you guys are much smarter than us. Good job.
A good resource, perhaps, for your clients would be the ECI, the Employers Council of Iowa, and they work. They're working with Iowa Workforce, and they provide information, webinars, seminars for small and large businesses. So the subject might be on taxes, it might be on healthcare, it might be on the latest drug things on the street to watch and test for, that sort of thing. It's called Employers Council of Iowa.
Anybody else have ideas about how to get in line as a first customer?
Something that's true of just about any industry, especially B2B, is just finding a way to become a resource for them. So find out what that piece of information is that they're clamoring for, that they can't find or learn on their own, just become a resource for them. How to do that. And it can be ancillary to it. It doesn't have to be about point of sale systems. It can be adjacent to that. But if you can be seen as an expert and a resource, it's a good way to get in.
John?
Here's a question. Just, the big players like Belly and Google, when they come into town and they kind of take you out of the room, talk about how you deal with, those players, if you're a Catchwind or this company here. I mean, how do you play in that space when big guys come in?
Well, and I think this parlays a little bit off of the restaurant concept. It's really about defining that particular story and that value proposition, and then telling that story incredibly well. Even for, obviously there's a lot of great products on Google Ads, there's a lot of great products on Facebook Ads, and there's a lot that those products can do for you on a higher level, probably, I would say. But what is important to me, and we're, looking at the example of Bit Method, is, being comfortable going after those restaurants in a really unique and meaningful way. If you're targeting a new restaurant, do you know their business? Do you know their business during the week? Do you know what those pain points are, if there are pain points? But when you can walk in with that value proposition, you're saying, hey, here's how I can make your life particularly easier. So I would say, we're hyper focused on really getting that one-to-one marketing down at a local individual level.
Yeah, so John, I think for us, we're fortunate that we live in kind of the digital space. So anytime digital dominates the headlines, I feel like it's a good thing. And if we can play on the popularity of Google, the popularity of Facebook, and remind everyone of the importance of digital marketing, then it's a a good thing. You know, we went through that episode where the state and others, their partners, really launched the Google free website program, right, for small businesses. And there was kind of a very little gasp in the hallways about that when, you know, and then we realized that's not us. That's not even close to what we do. It's not even close to who we are. But the idea of people going out and creating websites and thinking about their brand in the digital world is all about it. So we kind of built on that and applauded it and encouraged people to check it out. Didn't see it as a threat. So I think navigating some of those larger topics and finding a way that your brain connects with it, rather than trying to get scared of it and resist it, is the best approach.
Do you have any examples of maybe your favorites or successes that you've seen of small businesses, small companies, small nonprofits who had a strong social media campaign presence? They were not only branding their company, but they were also promoting individual programs or services. Somebody in the market that you've seen that's done a really good job of having social media as a part of their overall program and what they're doing.
I can take that. The best campaign, the most favorite campaign I've ever worked on was with the Blank Park Zoo. Earlier this year, we tacked on to the meme phenomenon, and we put together people interacting with animals in these memes. So the challenge was the zoo has 500 member benefits, but to list those all on a direct mail piece is brutal. So we were trying to drive people to that membership page. So we had, a kid sliding down the giraffe. We had a bald guy popping up with a prairie dog. We had a lot of fun things like that. We pushed that out on Facebook. I was actually prepared one of these sort of answers before I came here, so I actually have some stats. They reached over 1.2 million Facebook users with these posts, mostly because it was an interesting concept. It was different, so it stood out. But they asked their members to put themselves with the animals in Photoshop sort of opportunities. So, of course, those people were then spreading it out that way. They increased membership by 540 new members year over year, 14% renewal rate for current members. So, but what I really liked about it was they didn't stop at the social. They said, okay, this is great and all, but then they said, okay, let's put it in the direct mail. And then let's take it to the billboards. And so that was one of, to me, on a local level, probably one of the better ones that I've ever seen, and it was totally a part of it.
I would definitely echo the multi-channel approach for that. Anything that we've done social media-wise is to complement or to kick off what we're planning to do in the traditional media or marketing channels. So direct mail, our email, our website, all of it looks the same. Whether it's promoting a program or a service, promoting a story, promoting something that has absolutely nothing to do with the organization but is share-worthy and will get back, or fundraising. And one example of a company that I think has done a good job of that recently is Westside Auto Pros. And we've actually partnered with them for about a year now. Their goal was to build their Facebook page, so we had strategy around that, and their goal was to get more customers, so we had strategy with them around that. And we kind of became the marketing consultant in a way, but everything was mutually beneficial. It was a win for us. So for the Facebook fans, we got them 2,000 fans, not purchased, but true fans, but they donated $1 for every one that we got. So it was a win-win. And then when we got onto the customers, we talked about some ad and some values for our volunteers that they paid us to promote. And then recently we just did a car care seminar, which had absolutely nothing to do with animals. But again, it was a fundraiser and it earned them business. And so all of that started on social media and went offline. And actually, I was just sharing last week or a couple weeks ago, the owner and I had a bet on Facebook on voting for a picture on who wore the bow tie better kind of thing. It was silly, had nothing to do with either of our businesses, but the challenge was vote, and then whoever lost would make the donation to the ARL of $100. And so tons of interaction, tons of shares, and it had absolutely nothing to do with either of our businesses, but it was a personality within our business, and we were trying to show it more on, here's a person, we're beyond just Westside Auto Pros and beyond just More Rescue League. We're people behind us, and people loved it, and it was one of our just off-the-wall things that we thought we would do over a couple glasses of wine, and turned out to be really successful.
I mean, I can tell you, social media for me is still chaotic. It's just so chaotic. And I agree with everything they said. They're absolutely fundamentals. What's crazy for us is the things that work and don't work just surprise the heck out of us. The most successful Facebook post, and we manage social media for, I don't know, 100 months, I can't even tell you. The most successful, what do you think? I mean, we do announcements, we do all kinds of stuff, and the most successful Facebook post was, I love Yarsma Bakery. That is the most successful Facebook post we have ever created. I heart Yarsma Bakery. We do all of Yarsma's social media. So, I mean, we sit around and scratch our heads about strategy all day long, and that's what gets it, really. So Dutch letters is the answer to your question. Do Dutch letters. Pictures of pastries work well on social media.
That really speaks to knowing your audience, though. Who are you trying to reach and how are you going to reach them? And sometimes it is what touches their heart, what's going to grab them. There's a picture out today in social media just honoring the fact that today is World Food Day. It's has a UNICEF logo on it, so it's a wonderful branding piece, but it's a silver fork, but instead of being a fork, the far tine is a thumb, and it's clearly an outstretched hand. It's a great messaging tool. So know your audience, know how you're going to touch their heartstrings and touch them as an individual. And that's what's going to be shared, because that's what people connect.
Do either of you ever think that with social media being so close to who we are now because it's on this little device that we all carry at our desks 24/7, do you think social media will someday disarm this traditional approach and it will all gear towards you as an individual, personalized messaging, and that day of you placed an ad here, you did a billboard here is going to be ineffective?
You remind me of what people said when television began. I'm not that old, I just want to clarify. But when radio was replaced by television, so well, what's going to happen to radio? Radio will cease to exist because television is now the source of information. And God knows newspapers thought they were dead in the water. And every time a new medium comes along that is an information tool, the previous media say, oh my God, what's going to happen? But it all ends up being another layer and another valuable mechanism for reaching, perhaps in a more strategic way, but they all continue to exist. And I don't think social media is going to eliminate the tactile reward that we get when we actually get something in the mail that isn't a bill or somebody who wants our money. When there's something in there that's beautiful and lovely to touch, it's still going to touch us in a way. So direct mail is by no means dead as an advertising mechanism, but it's got to be very strategically applied as a tactic and for the right purpose. And I think social media will as well. There's certainly this noise that's created that Todd mentioned with it currently, and I think that will become refined down as the right messages to the right audiences become more apparent to us. But there'll be a new one. Come along right away, and then that'll be all the noise for a while.
But I think what's happened is you've got these other mediums that have gotten better, right? DVR was invented, and so we all fast forward at 30 seconds a clip. But now on the bottom of the screen, they're advertising something. YouTube's got the video on the bottom. Direct mail invented Perl, personalized URLs. So these other mediums, and then they lower their rate because nobody buys them. And there's just kind of a shift in this adjustment period that we're all dealing with. But to Susan's point, I think definitely the direct mail is still in play. As long as we're still driving cars, I'll look at billboards. Once virtual reality comes back, there's like this great dream in the 80s, this virtual reality. You never leave your home, but even then they probably advertise to you. So I don't think it goes away. I think this becomes more important and part of the overall integrated ability to reach customers.
I found myself complaining to the bank. See if anybody else in this room has had this happen last year. Have you missed something that was sent to you in the mail because don't really consider the mail as the legitimate way to transfer information anymore, right? A bill or a letter or something. I mean, I found myself complaining to the bank for sending me a statement in the mail that I totally missed. And my argument was that I don't look at the mail for that kind of information. And as I'm speaking, I'm like, am I really saying this? I'm really complaining that they sent me a document, which was a legitimate document, in the mail instead of emailing it to me. So, I mean, to that point, it's just mail for me has changed. Boy, it's still alive and well. I have a 17-year-old senior in high school. Boy, every day. I mean, it's stacks of direct mail. So clearly, the fundamentals are still going to be around, but I agree 100% that the purpose will change and evolve as always.
So my name is Lindsay. I work for Ashley, which is a social gaming company. And so far, we've been fortunate enough to pretty much rely on Facebook to do our marketing and advertising for us. We've been able to basically create a multi-million person audience out of that platform. The problem right now is that we're actually expanding our company and we're creating a new app that's working. That'll be based entirely on the iPhone, and then eventually Android as well. So where we're struggling with this is genuinely the traditional approach of how do we get the word out there about our news. Since we've been able to use Facebook as a crutch, if you will, it's been a bit easier on that front, but without we're all kind of big. Where we're struggling is how do we reach out to the right resources to put the word out for us. So really in terms of pulling in the right people to be our advocates, really preach for us. And I was just wondering if you guys have had any experience in that sense with really trying to figure out who to reach out to become your biggest fans and preach the word, product stuff. And have you had experience with that before?
Can I quantify your question a little bit? You won't be hiding eggs at all in the work?
There will be no eggs in this game.
Okay, very cool. Actually, it's very cool. We find little Easter eggs and stuff. And so there's no connection between the two?
No, this is we actually created this app last year at Startup Week in Des Moines. Okay. We got second place during that competition, and it just kind of became this new idea that we really wanted to expand upon. So we've been developing through Trigger, which is basically a substitute for doing a native app, and we've been building out entirely, and we're so close to launching, or at least to submitting to the App Store, that now is definitely time to turn our eyes on how we get the word out there, so that this doesn't just sit in the App Store with nobody downloading it.
Well, I mean, you're looking at kind of a traditional approach with a product launch. You're launching a new piece of machinery, if you will, or a game. Obviously, the audience is going to be people that play games already on their phones versus maybe those that play on Facebook. I think of all the people that invited me to play Words with Friends and how addicted I was to that for like 6 months, and I had to put it away. But you've had a challenge, right? I mean, you have to find the people that are the addicts to spread the good word, if you will.
Yeah, go back to your Malcolm Gladwell basics, right? The early adopters. You got across the chasm, adoption rates.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. I think you could probably learn a lot from what you did on the hatchlings business, because that took off like crazy. But again, you're looking at the App Store, and that's a whole new beast versus just playing through Zynga or playing through any other sort of mechanism on Facebook. Obviously, the people that are writing reviews of new apps, those are the people you're going to want to talk to, anybody that can help propel that message. That's one of the things I think a lot of people miss is the propeller of the message. A lot of people put that message out, I know who my target audience is. Well, you forgot the people that influence your target audience. And so you might be looking at some of that media specifically. And maybe even you started to tell a compelling story about Startup Weekend and how this evolved. So maybe that story becomes part of the pitch itself.
Just a comment, there's a local company called Pab Happy, Paige knows about, that has a game, and they've taken an approach to preconditioning the market, and they've gone to a lot of different events, They've released a 20-minute version of it. It's got a really high production value. And I guess their analogy would be being like yes from the 90s. It's very much that type of game. But they've gotten incredible buzz, and they're worth talking to in terms of what they've done because they're not ready to release. But they've got a good buzz by doing events very selectively around the country. They've got Guardian and Forbes, and they came to see us. The New York Times called, and Wall Street Journal. So they've got traditional media, and they've had over 300 some people who have played the game and then blogged about it. So they're doing a really nice job of conditioning the market. Plus, there's a platform called Booyah, which is a game platform. They've got released a whole bunch of money to continue to develop a game, and then they released other game platforms as well shortly thereafter. So, but it's worth seeing what they're doing in terms of marketing. 6 months, 8 months in advance of the launch of the full game. Anyway, the company's called Happy. They're worth talking to.
Okay, cool. Josh, you hit on a point earlier. I was talking to a local news outlet yesterday about my addiction to Candy Crush. And just given up. And the reporter asked me, so what's next? And I said, I don't know what's next. It was Words with Friends for a while, and then it was Candy Crush. And the day I realized I was playing Candy Crush while walking downstairs was the day I decided to quit playing. And she said, in her research, she's been finding sites that are catering to addicts of these games. And I thought, as you were mentioning addiction, marketing on the gaming site is expensive. But wonder if marketing on addiction sites maybe I gave up one, so I'm looking for something else. Hey, I played it on paper last year at start of the weekend. I know it's a winner already.
What if we started a fake organization like App Gamer Addicts? There you go. Reach out to them, and then you'd have a list. It's a little out there, but it's a press, right? You're not my client. So it's all
Are you saying you don't do any devious marketing? Is that what you mean?
Just do what?
Anything devious in marketing?
No.
Another idea for you, maybe if you're targeting essentially iPhone users in game addicts, I don't know if you look at iAds at all, which is exclusively for iPhone on devices. But maybe when you can get the last few rounds of Candy Crush, you can grab them with your ad to head them over to your other game. So if someone's addicted to one game and they catch an ad there, and then maybe you could
Absolutely.
made me think of this. There's a real sort of eye-opener for me. My brother did a Kickstarter program or a project for Bluetooth earbuds. He just sort of set it out there and then asked for a lot of money and then sort of pushed it as many ways as he possibly could and get his friends and friends and friends to all push it too. And it failed within like a month. And he basically took the exact same thing, changed some pronouns, and then relaunched it, asked for half as much, but then got people to write 3 articles in what I call sort of tier 2, not Wired.com, but like tier 2 or tier 3 magazines. And he made, $150,000 in 3 weeks. Because and you could literally watch the article hit, by 9 a.m. that day, the needle was moving again. So it was like, same product, exact same pitch, pushed it out all the same ways, but then he had 3 articles in, tier 2, tier 3 type tech magazines, and, it's great to see. So it was kind of a testimony.
Yeah. I have a question. Have you guys seen any trends or other ways that people are bridging or connecting their websites to social for e-commerce? Or anything you'd like people to be doing?
Are you talking about a trend like when you purchase with Dwala, you are offered the option to share that purchase?
That or design trends on the website, anything? Because we've seen in the new trends, and this is not necessarily correlated to my question, but how the infinite scroll on a website.
that knowledge design. So anything along that line are ways to, if you're especially in e-commerce, you've got their interest on social, now how do you keep them on your website?
We did a mobile app for Brownells, who's one of our large clients, and for a company that sells the volume of products that they do, they've done a great job. I know Brownells is the largest gun part distributor in the world, happens to be located in Madison, Iowa. And what's interesting about, and this, I don't know if this really speaks to your question, but just the way that we have created the layout of products and the ability to find pretty much any part to any gun ever made quickly, easily, then rate it and then share it in social media and connect back to the app. It works really, really well. And I give a lot of credit to our team, but a lot of credit to Brownell's team too for thinking through. I think what you're asking really is that total integration of the mobile environment with the web environment. I mean, we're doing everything responsive design now that we can, because it just the mobile device is it. You know, if you're not thinking about mobile, you're missing the boat.
Yeah, I would say the opportunity to share is key, regardless of, to an extent, what business your product you have. So, for example, we actually do a lot of work in higher education. And so thinking about that traditional undergraduate prospective student, it's a 16-year-old looking at a program page from the University of Iowa, right, thinking about the accounting program. Well, I should easily be able to share that content with whoever I want to, right? Like, hey, mom, check out this program that I'm interested in. So, you know, the ability to share content should be a very natural part of any of my properties.
I think to add to that too, the last stat I had read was that people spend 58 seconds on your website, but they'll spend 23 minutes on Facebook on average. So I think finding a way to push that information in a way that's interesting and meaningful to a person, but again, without being salesy, but more, here's some information you probably might help or didn't know about, which is, I think, where Pinterest has kind of taken the lead on that, where companies are now getting creative with how they're posting on Pinterest to direct them back to their website or direct them back to something else. And it's highly visual with the photo, very short caption, and then it takes them, if you're interested in more, or if you want to save that, or if you want to share it, and then that's when it becomes more viral. But I think the website's more of what you're driving people to. And then once they're there, like they go over machine, getting them to share that out back and forth.
Dutch leather's also got a lot of
I'm a big fan of time on site statistics. It's the one I look at the most. As much as we'd like to engage them on Facebook, we really want them on our own site because we truly get more analytics that way. I'm going to sound really old school, but Amazon.com still rules when it comes to related content. I always go to Amazon and look, and I spend way more time there than I should. I still buy CDs because I like to hold it, look at the liner notes. But if I'm on iTunes and I want to just buy a song, Mac Genius is awesome. And so you can see how just some of those e-commerce opportunities have shifted now into related content. So built a website for Kinsey Manufacturing, and you know they sell the planters and the grain carts. It's these really cool blue farming equipment things, really sexy stuff. I swear. But you know, if you're looking at the 3110 grain cart, underneath you'll see related content that's also 3110. And so by doing that, you're able to keep people on the site a little bit longer. As for sharing, I forget the gentleman who made the quote, but he said, "I share because I like my friends, not because I love your brand." And I thought that was pretty powerful. If you are going to share, it's because I want Susan to know that I got a great Groupon, not because I love the Groupon. So I think we need to be cognizant of the fact of why people are actually sharing. As much as we'd like them to love our brand, they like their friends a whole lot more.
Just a follow-up comment. So apparently Pinterest is looking at their API that you can use it in your websites now. Down the road, maybe a short year.
Tweet that out.
Yes.
Sure. Hi, my name is John Wilson. I'm the public affairs manager at DART. For the record, I'm one of the former print journalists from the Register who fled in fear of the GDC. And I've been thinking lately about crisis communications in that changing landscape. There are two trends that feed each other. One is that everyone is a journalist now. It doesn't matter if fair, accurate, or whatever. In particular, among them are the advocates who can take a cause, be passionate about it, contribute about it, and really make a stake online. And then the other trend is the journalists who are so stretched for time that they're emerging more and more into infotainment or feel like they take a cause any whack with a Twitter account. So what can organizations such as DART or other entities do to be proactive in being a presence online to counter incidents such as that?
This is the essence of PR, right? I mean, this is building that reputation and building that brand through your product or your organization or your service in advance of the crisis, so that they already know who you are, they already have a basis of a relationship, whatever that might be, and it's not the first time they've been introduced to you. So, as hard as it is for young companies, startups, and entrepreneurs to be thinking about PR when they're also trying to cook a meal for 37 people or create a new widget or a brand new PIO, it is so essential to make sure that you have these relationships developed, at least with those core propellers or influencers who are going to write about your worst case scenario, so that when the worst case scenario comes, you already have a dialogue with them, you've already introduced yourself, you already have a relationship started. That's the best place to be. I know it's also a huge challenge.
Susan speaks to the story of goodwill, right? So when Toyota had their drama with their pedal, most people didn't care that much because first of all, they owned it, and then second of all, everybody really loves Toyota because they've done such a good job in the past. Your challenge is that if somebody steps out in front of a bus, 50 people are going to tweet about it, and then for like an hour in Des Moines, it'll trend, and it'll be all your fault, even though the person didn't look left or right before they crossed the street. So
They're playing Candy Crush.
that's right. They start playing Candy Crush. Hashtag Candy Crush. Right? So I think, to our point, I mean, you have to build up that story. But well, I think from the entrepreneur's perspective, you're so busy trying to get people to care about your product that if you do mess up, you need to own it. And I think Wallet has done a good job with that. They've made mistakes. They've been right out in front and said, hey, we made a mistake. Here's what happened. So that whole honesty, transparency thing for a company or startup that hasn't yet earned that is extremely important. So I think, it's a good conversation to have with partners ahead of time. How are we going to react to certain things? I know you want to get that next product release out or that game out, but that's important.
The whole fail to plan to fail.
Right. Yeah.
Hi, Kaylee from Volunteer Local. We're a volunteer management software, and we actually just integrated social features at the back end. Well, it's really the front end, but it's for the volunteers and not the volunteer coordinators. So when a volunteer signs up to volunteer, we confirm the shift, and then we ask them if they want to share on Facebook or Twitter. And it's been amazing. It's blown up. We've had all these volunteers from everywhere tweeting and Facebooking. And I'm wondering, do you have any advice? How can we leverage that? Like, it's just happening, and I don't really know what to do with it or how to capitalize on it.
That's brilliant. Yeah. Because it allows the person to say, look what a good person I am. I volunteer for this.
Humble brag.
I created a hashtag, Happy Volunteering. And if you actually go on Twitter right now and you search it, you'll see all these people from everywhere that are tweeting just Happy Volunteering with the hashtag that we auto added in. And it was overwhelming, and so we're in this really cool place, but I'm not really sure how to make the most out of it.
Well, I was just going to say, in my mind, you've already started somewhere with kind of creating the hashtag, but I think you can continue growing it. So thinking about what other kind of quality content you can share related to something surrounding happy volunteering, right? What does that mean? How can you continue to kind of add to that? And why am I happy volunteering? And there's a lot of content that you can create around that. So even just starting there.
Are we trying to sell more software or recruit more volunteers?
Both.
So if I Facebook post my skills, I'm also promoting your software, right?
Yeah, it'll link back to the event on Volunteer Local where other volunteers can go and volunteer.
And they can see that your software is being used by all these people and they use the software for their organization.
Exactly. So a lot of event coordinators are kind of getting their ears first because they're realizing that volunteers in their city are signing up for this other thing. And there's no login required for volunteers, so it's easy to sign up and volunteer.
It's great. I don't know how to leverage it. But it's a great problem to have, right? Raise your hand if you like to have this problem. Too many people are talking about me.
I think I'd go by happyvolunteering.com if you don't have it already. It's fantastic. You could do a mosaic of all the people that have shared, maybe pull their avatar in there, and then you can click on their head and see their story, if you will. Yeah.
Actually, then connect to that Pinterest API and create a board.
There you go.
Because nonprofits are always looking for related events, right? And that doubles the value. And if you could have the pictures or event collateral or whatever related to volunteering.
Yeah, and I know that the Volunteer Local company, I know you and all that, if it takes off, consider changing the company name to that Happy Volunteering. Because then you know the hashtag and the domain, more of a cause sort of feel.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are you based here in Des Moines?
We are. Yes.
When you're trying to sell the platform, you could say on average when people sign up, we have so many X number of volunteers that actually share out. So pretty high to hit. There are publications out there, there are writers out there who cover philanthropy. Of course, they're also covering the Food Critic and everything else for their publications. But if they're writing about philanthropy and you can build a story around your product, the idea of we have a product, but not only that, but we find that there's this great buzz that's created because we make it so easy, which reflects well on the nonprofit, or reflects well on our software. It makes people happy. I mean, so you have the beginnings of a great story to pitch to probably national publications if they're currently writing about philanthropy and volunteerism. I know, Susan, each year the national statistics come out around which states have the highest level of volunteerism. I think it's in the fourth quarter. So that might be something to think about as well.
I wonder if you could quantify on average how many people share out per event and then sell that into the value proposition of the software. So on average, you can expect to receive 100 shares, which will reach average person has 500 friends, or whatever that might be.
Put a ticker on the site that, because everybody measures volunteer hours, right? So and have a rolling clock, so many volunteer hours under volunteer locals management. Just have a scroll up. Yeah, like the national debt clock. You don't associate with that. Don't associate with it.
I'm not a tech person, but I'm a runner, and I use Mount Run when I am running, and I'm very competitive. And I think if you play into people are not sharing this because they're altruistic. They're sharing it because they want credit. So if you play into that competitiveness, and I know with Mount Run, every time I run a course, it tells me who did it better or who did it more, and I can earn badges and that type of thing. So if you can somehow feel, I don't know if it's possible in the tech world, but you can play into that competitive spirit and that kind of, I guess, to the Foursquare concept of who was there the most or whatever.
The recognition of the biggest hours served or the biggest money raised or whatever that is.
So then they have an incentive to do more, and then not just share once, but then when you share, then they can be notified of this and they want to keep doing it.
We have now quickly moved into billable hours because the stuff is so good. So send an invoice. Everything before is free. This stuff is getting.
You're going to get a whole room full of new followers.
Yeah, I'm going to check out your software. It sounds awesome.
So somebody was talking, I think, Susan, you mentioned dipping or having that font of goodwill built up with somebody. So when you know you've got the worst case scenario coming up, how early do you identify or really notify into that fountain and let them know that there is an issue coming up that you will be managing and you're looking to tap into that goodwill? The proverbial pedal is just pushed.
Well, as my boss, Jay Byers, Stan Macy, will tell you that I am always looking for the pitfall before we step into it, and try to see it coming. It doesn't always happen that easily, and sometimes Jay's like, Susan, you raise the red flags. I don't mean that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. But it does help to just be aware of what the potentials are and be prepared, have a crisis communication plan in place, and know what those speaking points are so that you can initiate something very quickly. Because you never want anything to exceed, it used to be a daily news cycle. Now it's an hourly news cycle, even sometimes down to the minute. But you never want to keep that rolling and keep that growing. So you want to be able to address things as quickly as you possibly can and get it over with. It becomes old news as soon as you're out there. You own it, you claimed it, you apologized if necessary, and sometimes that's necessary, and then you move on. And you try to redirect to the next good piece of news that you're going to be able to. So the faster you can manage it, the better. And it often takes that. Here it comes. I'm going to tell you about it before you see it on Twitter, or I'm going to tell you about it before it makes the register's webpage. I want you to know this happened today, and this is how we're responding.
I think too, there's two different crisis issues that you could, or there's probably more, but two that come to mind are rumors that somebody started that weren't true to begin with, and then things that happened that you need to address and explain. And I think anytime, from our perspective, animal welfare is a very emotionally charged, crazy industry, let's be honest. And there are a lot of people who say things that frankly aren't true. And so we've always taken the perspective of everybody knows that's not true, or that's silly, and just totally discredit it and move on. When it's something that doesn't suffice, like Susan said, we do have a plan in place to explain that beyond. We were a couple months ago facing a situation which was totally a rumor-based, and we kind of got wind that it was maybe coming. And so we did start talking about, okay, what are they going to say? Who's their audience? And will we bring more attention to it by talking about it than we would by ignoring it? And so those were the things that we were considering. We did have our whole plan in place if it got to the fever pitch that we needed to address it. But prior to that, there's a lot of stuff that goes on we just flatly ignore. Or like she was talking about building your brand, where we have our supporters that squash it for us, and we don't even touch it because they just say, oh, come on, that's ridiculous, moving on. And then we pretend like, that was happening over there. It makes me think of the comments on news articles. If you read that, you're insanity. But they do that for you. So I don't even read it anymore. I don't care what they're saying. I know there's going to be our supporters and there's going to be people who don't support us, and they can fight it out, and we'll keep doing what we're doing. And that's the brand that we maintain, is that we're up here, and do all that down here. Once it gets up here, we might talk about it, but until then, that's just
There's a cool thing, if you guys do a Google image search for military blog assessment form. I found this like 5 or 6 years ago, but it's how the military responds to social comments about the military. And they break it down into, this is a chronic complainer, this is a troll, this is a myth that needs to be debunked, and then how to handle it. And it's this really cool chart that I've kind of adopted for other things. That, what makes sense for this brand may be different for that one. I got the pleasure of working with the Iowa Corn Growers Association during the Pewter family trophy incident. And Plan B, and I know who the Pewter family is and stuff. It's really kind of funny. The trophy was in my car for a little bit, short period of time. Anyway, so when this whole thing erupted and everybody hated the trophy, Plan B was always, we should let the people decide what the trophy is going to be, which was the suggested plan from the beginning. But no, we have to have the Pewter family and that sort of stuff. So, but that backup plan was ready to go. So when you say when the leverage the question, like, okay, they hate it. Now we need to have the press conference that we planned on having. Now we need to have the people decide sort of vote. So that was fun. Military blog assessment form, Google image search.
Yeah, it's just a big flow chart. But it's,
breaks it down excellently.
Reverse and then SEAL Team 6.
Remember, Google's watching you too, so as soon as you click on that.
Well, we're coming close to the hour's end. If there's a burning question, let's go for that. Otherwise, love to wrap up. Last